Hi, I'm Dave Miller. I'm the Director of College Counseling at Stevenson School in Pebble Beach, California, and I'd like to welcome you to the second year and the fifth installment in a series that we call College Prep for You. In this episode, we'll focus on athletics and recruiting. In prior shows this year, we've talked about everything. We've had a student panel in our chapel with 4 admissions officers and 4 students asking a bunch of questions. We've had a preview show. We've surveyed the whole year. We've talked about finances and scholarships and merit aid. We've talked about the SATs, standardized testing. We've talked about the interview recommendations, virtually every aspect of this sort of long, arduous, paradoxical, interesting, adventuresome process to try to teach both the families and the students in Monterey County about applying to college and getting admitted to college. We've tried to stay on line with actually what's happening, so we bounce back and forth between seniors and juniors. Throughout the spring, we've mainly been dealing with the juniors. Today, we're dealing with the seniors, or actually with juniors, because it's the start of the recruiting season for underclassmen. So we're going to talk about lots of things, the philosophy, the nitty-gritty. We're going to talk about the NCAA eligibility form. A lot of things are going to be very practical. We also have some philosophical considerations we'll deal with, and we're going to have a panel. Sometimes we have a panel, sometimes we go alone, but I thought today this would lend itself to a panel, a rather distinguished panel. We've got a couple of adults and a couple of students, and so we've tried to cover all aspects of this problem. We're going to basically run with the same philosophy that I use when I talk to our student groups at Stevenson School. And I'm going to use both a PowerPoint, and I'll start that right now. We'll also have some discussion and end up with some free advice at the end. But basically, the philosophy I've used as a coach and as a counselor and as a teacher through the years is to have the families and students think about sports as a way to gain entrance to college. Don't let sports use you, you use sports. You've got to be proactive about this. Another thing we point out is there's not really much room at the top. Everybody talks about getting a college scholarship and getting a full ride and this, that, and the other thing, and it just doesn't happen much. And so there's very, very little room for mistake and very, very little room at the top. That said, every high school student who does a high school sport can use sports and play sports in college. It might not be Division I or Division II, but if you're a high school starter, you can play Division III sports. The next major idea is that you've got to take the bull by the horns and run. You've got to be proactive. You can't wait for a little bird to come down on your shoulder and tell you what to do. And then where do you go? There are lots of adults that want to help you. Your AD, in our case it's Coach Young. The College Center, that would be me. Your coach, your teachers, other people have gone through the process. So a lot of people that can help you. Our panel today, we're going to meet them here in a second. Vince Odepol is the new athletic director at Cal State Monterey Bay. Lynn Holt is a parent of a Division I tennis recruit. Chris Boniface is a Pac-10 football player from Stanford who was both my student and I was his advisor, a close personal friend with his family, and I happened to coach Chris. And then Taylor Holt, the daughter of Lynn. She's a Division I recruit this year, and I work with her and lots of coaches, and she's headed off to Fordham to play tennis there. And then finally, Deborah Lee, an undergraduate. She's a junior, came to us this year as one of the top golfers in her homeland in the Pacific Rim. She's a Division I golf recruit, and she's both got really good numbers on the golf course and as a student. So she can give us some perspective on what it's like to go through this whole procedure. Now, the things we're going to try to cover today, the philosophy and the role of athletics relative to college admissions. How do I become recruited to play sports in college? How can I prepare to become a recruited athlete? And that doesn't apply to a great number of people, but for those of you that it does apply to, you can learn a lot today. We want to understand all about the NCAA Eligibility Center. And then what the heck does it mean, Division I, II, and III? What's the difference and where do I fit in there? And then, because we've got some recruited athletes here, we're going to talk about the ins and outs of recruiting, maybe give you some background information, some things you might not readily find elsewhere. We're going to talk about the role of the college recruiter, and Vince has done a little bit of that, and I've worked with people like him. The role of the high school coach, he has coached, and I've coached a little bit, so we've got a lot of mileage there. I'm a college advisor and counselor, so hopefully I'll be able to add some insight there. Lynn is going to talk about the role of the parent. And then all of us are going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. What are the benefits of this whole process? What are the drawbacks? It's not all roses and wonderful things, as I think all of us can attest. We can all tell a horror story or two. So before we get started, let's meet the panel here. And I hope these pictures are a reasonable facsimile. Vince was at Stanford, now he's at Cal State Monterey Bay. There's a picture of Chris in his heyday here, playing football up at Stanford. And this is a nice recent picture of Taylor. This is probably an ace you're serving here, right, Taylor?
Yeah.
Playing tennis. And I didn't have an action shot in golf of Deborah, but I took her back east visiting some schools, and this is pretty typical. She's standing in the winter right out in front of the sports complex at Brown, one of the schools that she's talking to and is showing a lot of interest to Deborah. So those are the faces. And before we get started in the NCAA, let's meet the panel. And I guess we'll start with beauty before age. So Lynn, tell us about yourself and the context in which you're functioning today.
My name is Lynn Holt, and I'm Taylor's mom. And as a parent, my role, I felt, was I did a lot of the busy work, getting phone numbers or getting email addresses and kind of guiding, helping her with the busy work sort of thing, getting the video, the DVDs ready to go. We would look at college rosters and kind of see, well, do you think you could fit in on this team? And so kind of helping her with that process. But then she did everything else. She did all the contact. It was my job to just remind her, have you sent those emails? Have you returned those phone calls? That sort of thing, just to keep her on track, I guess, through the whole thing.
And Dad helped a little bit too?
It's moral support, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, it sounds to me like you did
support.
exactly what you're supposed to do, both as a parent and in the college process, but most importantly in the athletic process also. Too many parents want to put a stranglehold on this process and own it themselves and vicariously live through the kids, and that's not what we like to see. So I appreciate that you took that, and I know full well that you took that approach. You do the busy work. That's what we did for our kids. You do all the stuff behind the scenes and let them be the star and let them really be proactive, because that's what the coaches and the colleges like to see as well. So we're going to come back to you for some confirmations of some other things. Vince, you've got a bigger role here. What all do you do?
I'm the athletic director at Cal State Monterey Bay. I've been there since October. Before that, I was at San Jose State in their athletic department. I was at Stanford in their athletic department before that, which was great. It was my alma mater as a football player like Chris was there. And at Monterey Bay now, as the athletic director, my job is to ensure that our student athletes, 278 of our student athletes with all 13 sports that we have the best possible opportunity they have to have a good experience as a student athlete at our university.
Okay, so you're looking out for them both as students and as athletes.
Correct.
Your job depends upon manning these teams, being successful, getting a good array of coaches, but they've got to produce. And you're going to stay in a job as long as you solve those two big dilemmas, academics and sports, right?
Absolutely. Our student athletes know that their jobs are twofold. Number one, to be students and have success in the classroom. And number two, their title is to be an athlete. And that, in their venue of competition, whatever they've chosen that to be, whether it's tennis or golf or whatever, they have to go out and be successful. And they need to take care of their teammates and really be good ambassadors for the university. That's what our coaches look for. When we're recruiting student athletes, when we are getting student athletes to be a part of our program, we want student athletes who are going to be good ambassadors for the university.
Yeah, good. We're going to come back to you for the wealth of experience you have as a player, as a coach, as a recruiter, as an AD. Seems like you've got the whole package there. And also, more importantly, maybe to flesh in some differences about Division II that I'm a little weak on, and we're all pretty much aware of Division I and Division III, but we need to find that missing piece as well. Chris, you were on the program last year and mentioned that you've been part of the Stevenson community, and you're part of my personal community, and I've seen you sort of grow up and went to your games and things, but give us some insight on this process for you, both as a football player and as an all-around athlete.
Well, I've been kind of went through the whole process. I'm a recent graduate from Stanford. I'm about 3 years out. Played 5 years there, football, and kind of went through the whole process, the whole ups and downs of the cycle. Basically started Division III. My brother went to Middlebury, wanted to go there, and it just kind of was an evolution for me. And it was kind of a wild ride, and it escalated. And I just found that Lynn makes some great points. A lot of things come up, and it's really your introduction into the college football life, or whatever the athletic life of Division I sports or Division II, whatever it would be. It's very demanding, and it's kind of your introduction, and how you do here really is foretelling for how you'll fare and do when you're kind of finally reach that level. So kind of had that experience, and I'll kind of relate to you those stories.
So you started out, with your brother's model, low-level sports, Middlebury is just appropriate, it's what most people do. And then you thought maybe lacrosse, because you were a good enough Division I lacrosse player, even though this is not lacrosse country. And then somehow you had a really good junior year in football, always taking care of business academically, good numbers, good scores, all of that. And then you sort of flipped that coin and turned the athletic prowess and getting bigger in size and strength, turned that focus over to football, which started a little late in the whole process, even though lacrosse was on time. So you've sort of ran the gamut, and you visited schools, you did the 5 trips, you did all that stuff, started looking at the lesser Division I schools, some of the Ivies and Patriot League, and then that blossomed into the real big deal, the Pac-10 stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
So a lot of good experience here. Okay, ladies, how about you? Taylor, you're a senior here. Tell us what all you've gone through.
Well, I have played tennis for my whole life, so I knew that I wanted to play in college. And the whole process, it was really long, and it took a while. It took a lot out of me, but I got in contact with coaches at camps and checking on recruiting websites, seeing who had looked at me, who had shown interest. So just got in contact with coaches, set up some dates, went, and then just went and visited, and now I'm going to Fordham.
And you had a little list that had some, a lot of different leagues, but some Division I and Division III, and
Yes.
some difficult academic places, a little less so. But you had some choices. You had a nice array of things, and it came down to a couple, 3 schools right at the end, didn't it?
Yeah, I really wanted a variety because I wasn't really sure what I wanted exactly. And so when I went on those recruiting trips, I knew that would be when I would find out what exactly I wanted. So I kind of wanted the choices to choose from. So.
Okay, good. And Deborah, we're a junior now, and so we get the whole senior year to go, and you've got this summer for tournaments and things. So you're a golfer, sort of making your mark right now, and you're also, like Taylor, you're a good student, so you're going to have lots of choices. Tell us about your situation.
So this year I started writing letters to coaches and researching schools that I really wanted to go to, and then went on the college tours in California, West Coast, and in the East Coast, and meeting the coaches and keeping in contact with them. And right now, keeping my grades up and playing in more tournaments is my main focus.
Okay.
Yeah.
You went both to Southern California with me and back east.
Yeah.
Refresh my memory. I know we saw USC and UCLA,
Yeah.
Brown, who else?
UPenn, Yale, Princeton. I went to Harvard by myself, and Williams. There's so many schools. I
Yeah,
don't
a lot of good
actually
places. I
remember.
was with you some of them, some of you were on your own.
Yeah.
But the good thing is you saw types of schools.
Yeah, that
and
was the
different
good thing.
levels, and you got the ball rolling. And you sort of did the same thing. You went on the East Coast with me. I remember taking you to Lehigh and a couple of places. Where else did you see?
I went on both, actually.
Oh, did you go?
I went to
Southern
SoCal,
California?
but
Who did we meet on the
didn't
Southern California
talk
trip?
to anyone.
Nobody. Okay.
But on the East Coast, I saw Lehigh and a couple others, Fordham,
Yeah.
I think. And,
In fact, I remember we broke into a Lehigh tournament. They were playing
Yeah.
Drexel or somebody, and the coach let us sit right in the stands and gave you a lot of attention, as I remember.
Yeah.
So I think that's a pretty important element. What would you say, as an athletic director, when a kid comes on the campus, he takes the bull by the horn, and he's aggressive in coming to you? What's the message sent?
That person is very interested in being a part of the university and wants to be a part of what we're doing. They've done some research, obviously, like you just described, and they have decided that they want to find out more.
Yeah.
They want to come and be a part of what we're doing.
Okay, so along with those approaches, you have to jump through a few hoops, and we want to talk about the main one here, the NCAA. What the heck is the NCAA? What does it do? Why is it needed? What do students, athletes need to know? This is their site, so let me just give that to the expert. What is the NCAA?
The NCAA is our governing body of collegiate athletics. They are in charge of all of our competitions.
To make sure everything's level, fair, square, we all playing by the same rules.
Exactly correct.
National Collegiate Athletic Association. Here's the site. There's the little address. If you need to go to it, you can Google that. And that leads us to the specific hoop that people have to jump through. this NCAA Eligibility Center. They used to call it the Clearinghouse. It used to be in Iowa. Now it's in Indianapolis, I believe. And this is their site. You can Google that also. Probably get there right off the NCAA itself. But what does the Eligibility Center do, Vince?
They basically ensure, and like you said, David, they make sure that everything is fair and that everybody is playing literally on the same playing field.
All sports.
All sports.
Male, female, all divisions.
If we're going to have a student athlete participate for us at California State University of Monterey Bay, they've got to be on the Clearinghouse.
Yeah, and Chris, you remember doing that, right?
A lot of meetings set in on, they struck a lot of fear into our hearts, whatever they could do to make sure we were going by the book. But we were very informed throughout the year. Every year, there was annual meetings, and we were constantly up to date.
While you're there.
While we're there, absolutely. Not so much in the recruiting process. That was kind of a lot of the gray area.
Yeah.
And I think if anything, they kind of want to make you, maybe not so filled into, what's right and wrong. So they don't, I don't know. It can get a little shady, but yeah, definitely more so once you're there, making sure that they're taking care of their side, and, making sure they're responsible so they're not liable for anything.
Okay, and you've already started that process, Deborah, and you finished it, right, Taylor? You're all cleared and ready to go. So a couple of things to think about. What is the purpose? Why is it needed? How does it work? How can I register? When do I register? What are the academic requirements? Am I an amateur? Things we take for granted. So there are a lot of specific things that this deals with, and then things that maybe we don't really need to worry about this qualifier or non-qualifier, because I think most of the students we work with are qualifiers, and I had a couple of football players at Seaside years ago that were recruited as non-qualifiers, and they basically had to burn a year, but I don't think that's really going to affect a great number of our viewers. Okay, so this NCAA Eligibility Center, things you need to know about it. It certifies the student to play. You can't play Division I or II without it. Division III, that's another matter. You just sort of show up and there you are. Gives a level playing field for everybody. It's located centrally in the Midwest. And they do this amateurism certification. There's a questionnaire. They make sure that nobody falls into the trap that poor Jim Thorpe did and had to lose all of his Olympic medals here. Here's the site. There's a booklet you can get online. You can Google this and go to the spot. You can even phone them, talk to them. But you need to start taking care of this the junior year. So, Deborah, you've been in this for a year and started at the beginning of the fall for you, and anybody out there who's serious about this and you haven't taken care of it, you need to look at this process and get registered. And here's how you do it. You need to fill out this paperwork. It's a student release form. They're going to want to see your Social Security number, and you don't have one, Deborah, so what'd they do about that for you?
I actually haven't started registering there because I think I have all the credits that's required, so I'll probably be starting on it in the summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. There's a little fee you have to pay for. In fact, you treat this like a college. You've got to send your SATs or ACTs. You have to send your transcript, and they'll give you a little PIN number. And then there's a variety of academic requirements. And Vince, I want you to sort of highlight the differences with Division II here in a second. Obviously, you have to graduate from high schools, send your scores in, have your registrar send in your transcript, and then meet these 16 core course requirements. And I believe that started with the class of 2008 a few years ago, but obviously everybody has to do it now. There's a sliding scale of a minimum of GPAs in core classes, and that's related to the combined SAT, ACT scores that people have. And I'll show you what those look like in a second. And the requirements, as I understand, are a little bit less stringent for Division II. What are the differences?
There's not really very many between Division II and Division I. The main difference is between Division II, Division I versus Division III.
Yeah.
Because Division I gives scholarships, obviously. Division II gives scholarships also.
Fewer.
Fewer, not the same dollar amount, that's right. But Division III does not give scholarships.
Yeah.
So Division I and Division II requirements are very similar. Division III, not necessarily.
Okay. Let's take a look at this sliding scale. There's a core GPA, and the higher your GPA, the lower your scores can be. For example, if you have a 355, that's a pretty strong B, pushing an A-. You can have as low as a 400 on the SAT. I can't imagine somebody scoring a 400, but I think you get that for signing your name. And on the ACT, this is a composite of several subscores of the ACT. That's a 37. And you work all the way to the bottom. If you have a 2.0, then you better have a 1010, which is slightly above average for the SATs. And the 86, that's a composite score for the SATs. And of course, for the NCAA recruiting, they only require 2 of the tests, the critical reading and the math. They don't look at the writing. How does that scale compare to the Division II scale?
Very similar.
Pretty close.
Yeah, very similar. If you're really serious about being a student athlete at the Division II level, you need to be very similar, or very close to those.
Yeah, and you
Division
can't
I
afford to
numbers.
have a student show up and then leave. You know, you want to keep those athletes on campus.
Well, we're recruiting them.
Yeah.
We want them.
Okay, looking at the core courses, and I think if you're challenging yourself in high school, you're going to have 4 years of English, 3 years of math, and that's Algebra 1 or better. 2 years of science, and only one of those has to be a lab. So if you don't do that, you probably shouldn't be going to college. 2 years of social science, and then an elective, and then 4 additional core courses, and that's pretty similar to Division II as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
We're
and
going-
pretty minimal. Okay, let's look at overall Division II from Division I. My impression are there are little different types of schools, and I'll give you a list of schools. Fewer numbers, little less money, little less emphasis, fewer times on TV, and it's just sort of ratcheted down a little bit. Am I getting that right?
That's right. That's a good description.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything we're missing?
Well, no. The only, really what Division II does is really focuses a little bit more on the student-athlete experience.
Not
as
quite
a
the
student.
professional athlete.
Not quite the Division I
Yeah.
that Chris has been used to, but Division II is very competitive.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just a little bit different world, not
Yeah, I
not
remember
the
a
same.
Division II football national championship a few years ago. I saw Northern Colorado. They looked like a really strong Division I
Yeah.
team and probably could have played with, many Division I teams. Okay, let's look at Division III, where Chris's brother played at Middlebury, and that's where a lot of in fact, the majority of our students go. Division III, there's no qualifying needed. That's the good news. But bad news, no scholarships. If you are admitted, you get to play. So what is the enticement? The enticement, I think, it helps me in my game because it helps you get into college. So if you can't get the scholarship, you use sports. Don't let sports use you. You get into Middlebury over somebody who maybe is a little stronger than you academically, but they need to have a captain of the football team. So Division III is a great story here. Okay, just very briefly, we could talk the rest of the hour on this, but the philosophy or role of athletics in college admissions. Okay, Mom, how do you see this?
It ended up, it was funny, I was talking with a friend, and she said, oh, I thought it would be easier to choose a college with the tennis. And it really made it more difficult because you had so many more pieces of the puzzle to fit. It did help, get the leg in or, get a little further. But it also made it more difficult because you look at this school for academics, but, not too sure about the coach, right?
Exactly.
And that sort of thing.
So how are you going to compromise?
Yeah. I mean, she literally had to make the little chart and
Okay,
chart
ladies,
it
let me
all
put the ball
out.
in your court here. If it comes down to the academic institution or the athletic possibilities, what's going to win out for you?
Well,
Huh? Both? You can't say both. You got to take a position here.
for me, academics is really important, so academics would definitely come first, but then the team would also be really important, so
Okay.
both have to balance out kind of, but academics comes first for me.
Okay. Taylor, how about you?
I'd probably say academics too,
Okay.
but it wouldn't be a lot higher than athletics because tennis is just really important to me.
And I think I probably had a major role in sort of twisting Chris's arm because, I'm a Cardinal alum, and I sort of always try to get kids to go there. And as a football coach and a friend of the family, I've always had vested interest there. And also looking down the road, knowing what can happen, you finish after Stanford for 5 years, you got a master's degree, you got great contacts. No matter what happened in sports, I think the money is best spent, the decision's best spent there. And I can look back probably with a smile on my face and say, I told you so. Chris was recruited by everybody, USC, UCLA, everybody in the world. And, I'm not quite sure how the Stanford decision got made, but I think it was a good one. And I don't think that's one that you would regret.
Not at all. Deborah makes a great point in terms of you go, you meet your teammates, you really want to know who you're going to be spending the next 4 or 5 years of your life with because you meet with them every day, a lot of hours, they're going to be your close friends, the people, you go through so many turmoils and hardships with, and these people you really grow with. So it's a beautiful thing in that respect. So I think that needs to be your main decision-making factor. But I also looked at it, kind of from my perspective now and seeing kind of how, the process evolved. It's important that you do represent yourself well, that you need to sell yourself. I mean, basically, it's a funny process, but basically what you want to do is you want to start a brush fire. You want to start, get the spark, wherever it is, and then eventually people start hearing about you, and then it just takes off.
Yeah, and I think that happened. I remember we went up and saw a Texas game. I took you and Wes up there and started talking to some coaches, and Chris Boniface, you get the word out, and all of a sudden Berkeley's got to talk to you, and then UCLA, and nobody wants to let somebody get away. And then you quit thinking about, the Harvards, Yales, and Princeton, a little bit lower Division I. Of course, they're not going to give you anything either. And boy, it pressure fire is a really good analogy. I like that metaphor. You get that thing started, and you probably see that, at your level as well.
You bet.
You want to get those kids that are in that league that's in your gun sights.
Yeah, you don't want to lose those because you don't want to play against them.
Exactly.
I wouldn't want to play against Chris.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I'm a student here, and the basic question, how am I going to get recruited for school, and how can I best prepare myself to be a recruited athlete? This is the magic question here. What do I do now? A couple of things here. Consult with people like us, with your advisors, with coaches, with teachers, with parents that have gone through it. Deborah, here's a good mentor right here with you with Taylor. She's just gone through all this stuff. Look at the guidebooks, look at the sites, and I'll show you a couple examples here. Prepare an athletic resume and a DVD, and I'll show you one of those here in a second. Play in the summer leagues, be on traveling teams, play in these summer tournaments, those things that you guys did. And then if you can, get some sort of regional, state, national rankings, scores. If your sport is data-driven, you got to get the data. If it's team-oriented, your team has to do well. You got to be in tournaments where you're seen in the summertime. It all sort of works together. Obviously, you have to get lots and lots of attention from somewhere, and then you got to deliver the goods. We've got two examples here. One is the sports scholarship book. There are tons of books. You can Google these, go to Amazon, get a good basic text to use, and then look at the sites. More and more people are going to the internet sites, and I just found one last night. It's called Tackle Recruiting is Here. I got on the site, looked at it. Fairly commercial. Somebody's making some money from it, but it's a way to get started and get lots and lots of information. I brought two things to show to you also, if you can show the camera on me. This is a book that our students use, the High School Athlete's Guide to College Sports. I use it, and I share it with kids. And then I brought a DVD that one of our students, and you can't see it very close here, but it's packaged very nicely. There are two DVDs. One of our Red Hot parents did this. Kelly Akuchi, she happens to be a junior at Harvard right now, turned down a full scholarship to Berkeley for soccer, came on late in her career and was a super athlete, won the CCS in track in a couple of events, combined speed, athleticism, and the whole recruiting thing, plus good numbers. And she held out through Brown and Columbia and eventually got this reach dream for her at Harvard. Even though she was like 6 or 7 on their list, she went there, and right off the bat, she's a superstar there. 2 sports, doing soccer. She's a great defensive player in soccer, and so she did everything the right way. And so you get a hold of something like this where somebody's done a good job, learn from them. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can steal. That's what coaches do. We steal ideas here. So what else can you do? Some other things. Visit schools, just like these young ladies did. Talk to recruiters. Talk to people like Vince. If you're lucky enough to get a mailing based on your scores, based on athletics. I know my football coach in high school sent out these little postcards for all these little schools that he thought were appropriate for us. And he sent 3 for me, and I visited these 3 schools, and I'm sitting here talking to you because of that, man. That's sort of why I, coach football and taught, and I've, been involved in this whole deal. I'm doing exactly what this guy did for me. So you got to respond. Somebody shows you love, you got to show them love back. And you can watch shows like this. I mean, we're out here trying to give you a leg up on people who don't have access to this information. It's going to show all through the summer. It's going to show, a couple times next week. So look at this series, learn about this whole game if you can, and then learn about these NCAA requirements, because you're going to have to jump through that hoop. Here's an example that Taylor referred to. And Taylor, you probably have one of these yourself, right?
Yes, I
Again, I
do.
wish I had cut yours off, but this was Catherine Dickinson, who was on the show last year. She was a highly recruited Division III, sort of weak Division I tennis player, but she parlayed being just good enough athletically, just good enough academically to go to a really fantastic school. It's one of my favorite schools. It's called Davidson in North Carolina. So she's at an Ivy League type school, but she's playing big time sports, and I understand she's doing well there on both sides, and it's just the right place for her. But she had a family and parents like the Holtz that really uncovered all the rocks, and they did all the stuff you have to do. And this is one thing that the data-driven athletes can do. They can create their own sites, and I remember she was checking all the time, all these recruiting lists and all these hits, and you've had lots of hits on your site. Like how many? Give us an example.
Oh, I have no idea.
Probably hundreds, based on the level that you are. If you're playing against how you do against the, 5-star players versus 3-star and so forth. And obviously you have an index with golf, so that you can, people can get at how you are. But as a team sport, football, it's a little different deal here. So you got to be proactive. and get moving on it. Now, the next big question, how do I know if I'm Division I or Division II or Division III? Well, what's the shortest answer to that, Division I, Division III?
Yeah, well, it depends on, like you said, showing love. If someone sends you an information card, a coach or a school, then you need to return that. But you need to do some soul searching before that too, because being a student athlete is tough. I mean, you put a lot of hours in at the Division I versus Division II or Division III.
Yeah, and you can maybe hope to be a Division I athlete, but sometimes it's never going to happen. Like, for example, I will never be 6 feet tall. It's just not going to happen. And some people are Division I and some people are not. My answer, the quick answer to this is size, speed, competition, and communication. It's like the Supreme Court justice said about pornography. I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. Well, I think we know a Division I player. The athletes are bigger, taller. Usually a coach used to describe they would have an axe-handle rear end, these big Pac-10 linemen. So you tend to know it's speed, it's how you're hitting the ball in golf, it's your service and delivery, and you know what it is in your sport.
Not always.
Not always. Give us an example.
Well, a close friend of mine who, it's funny kind of how things evolved. He, from Menlo Atherton, played, he was a defensive end there, came on, convinced Tyrone Willingham, he was a year older than me, convinced Tyrone Willingham to let him come on as a punter at Stanford. Next year, convinced him to let him come on as a wide receiver, play that as well, walk on. By the end of his years, he had earned a scholarship at receiver. He didn't get drafted, but kept playing. He was on the practice squad at San Diego for 2 years. Great place to play and be on a practice squad.
Sure.
Receiver coach loved him there, brought him to Miami. His first year in Miami, ended up being brought up from the practice squad, had the biggest touchdown, won the biggest game of their year, started the next year, halfway through the season last year, look at the paper, he's the 9th leading receiver in the NFL, Greg Camarillo.
Yeah.
But great guy,
That's right,
great
he was
story.
a walk-on at Stanford.
I mean, there's actually, constant stories because,
Yeah.
it's a weird thing, depending on what your ambitions are, the goal has to be there. That's the defining thing, I think.
Well, Stanford's leading receiver this year was a walk-on from Palo Alto High School. Slow white kid with great hands. All he does is produce for you. So, we might see him in the NFL. You're right. I take that caveat advisedly. Okay, but basically, what is the difference, so our viewers can know, what's the difference between Division I, II, and III? Division I, basically big-time football schools. There's a Division I AAA, those schools that don't have football, and I can't really even name too many of those. They're allowed a maximum number of scholarships per sport. It's like 85 for football. The emphasis is on big-time sports. Think TV, think big leagues, and there are about 300 of these schools, and they all don't have football. They're the television schools, and these are some people you would probably recognize. The Pac-10, the Cals and Stanfords, the ACC, the Big Ten, the Southeast Conference, Alabama, Georgia, all the ones you see on TV, those, and the big independents, Notre Dame and the academies. Those are the Division II schools, I'm sorry. Division II schools, and I had to sort of search around a little bit. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, and all the big public state schools, Slippery Rock and Edinboro, those were all Division II places. In California, a lot of our Cal States, including Cal State Monterey Bay, Sonoma State, back east, some little private schools, Bryant and C.W. Post, Central Oklahoma, a place you haven't heard of, Hillsdale College, Truman State, South Dakota, Winston-Salem in the Carolinas. So a lot of off-brand name places, but it's really big time to them. What are some other places?
Well, I was just going to say, Chris made a great point about being a walk-on. At Division II, and especially in this part of California, and this is something people need to be aware of, is we had 2 national champions come out of our league, the California Collegiate Athletic Association, last year.
In individual sports?
In team sports.
Team sport. Oh, okay. The
Men's
team
soccer
champions.
from Cal State Dominguez Hills was a national champion.
Wow, how did they
last
get
year.
kids to Dominguez Hills to be national champions?
They're California kids. I mean,
Yeah.
why would you want to leave
That's soccer.
California?
That's exactly right. There's the answer.
And
Yeah.
then Humboldt was the national softball champion last year.
Wow. Jeez.
So
Division
we've
II.
got a Division II. And, and again, getting back to what Taylor said about being a long process, it is a long process, but there's people who are committed to being national champions at the Division II level.
Yeah, and you always have a legit Division I guy on the team. My son played with Club Lacrosse in college, but there were a couple of sneakers in there from Syracuse and Long Island, big-time lacrosse guys. I played Division I AA, on the East Coast. It wasn't great football. We certainly couldn't play with Penn State, things like that. It was in the Ivy League, but we had a couple of 300-pounders from Texas and Florida, and they could have played for anybody. Brian Dowling played for Yale when I was in school, and he turned down Ohio State to go there. So you get, sort of crummy guys like me playing at that level, but then you had some really big-time guys that were good. So you get that mix. Now, Stanford and Cal and USC, they can't afford to have guys like me hanging around. You have to have real good, athletes that can do it. But Division II is sort of an interesting blend. And then you drop off to, and I shouldn't say drop off, but it's a different approach. Division III, certainly a minor emphasis on sports. They are not an athletic scholarship place. So they have different rules in terms of recruiting, coaching, spring practice, bowl games, all of that. So they're just not following those NCAA eligibility guidelines. And there's lots of them. In fact, the majority of schools are Division III, so your chances are much better. And these are some names you can take a look at. The NESCAC, where a lot of our kids try to go to school, Williams, Amherst, Middlebury, Bowdoin, those schools. There's a Centennial League in Pennsylvania with some names you'll recognize. University Athletic Association, great academic institutions, but very small emphasis on sports. Chicago, NYU, those places. The Claremonts down in Southern California, Occidental, Lewis and Clark up in the Northwest, Worcester in the Midwest, Lake Forest, Wittenberg. A lot of fine institutions. MIT, Division III place. So pretty good examples. Any other thoughts or comments on those levels?
Well, the one thing that, like I said, when Taylor had, after going on the Northeast tour and seeing schools, looking at campuses and looking at the academics, but then really going to the websites for those teams and looking to see who is on the team and, oh, well, they're losing 4 seniors,
Yeah.
and reading, their little bios and going, I could play with, those kids. So knowing where you are in your sport, you can compare yourself to the kids on the current team, and it's like, oh, well, they have, like I said, losing a lot of seniors, or, oh, they've got a pretty young team.
Exactly.
That sort of thing. And that was a big, because you could tell Division III, they maybe just played in high school,
Yeah.
and they didn't really talk about a national ranking or sort. So if you know your sport, then you can compare yourself to the kids on the team already.
Good insight. And I remember at the Lehigh game match that we went to, we're sitting on the sideline, we're watching the ball come in, we're like right in front of things, and I asked Taylor, I said, could you play with these girls? And she said, oh yeah, I can go out there and play right now. That's a pretty good feeling. And we sent a kid back to Princeton for tennis a couple years ago, and when he did his visit in the spring, they let him practice a little bit and maybe a couple of violations there, but he came back and I said, well, how do you stand with him? He said, I'd be number 7 right now. He could do it. And in football, that level, there's a lot of jockeying. That's one of the prime things that kids look into. I'm going to be a quarterback, and the senior's leaving this year, and there's a freshman and sophomore now, so I get a chance to play. And if you don't, then you end up with the kid at Michigan who transferred to Stanford, and we get this great quarterback because he didn't see a lot of room at Michigan. I'm not sure how much that goes on with you guys, Division II.
With transfers?
The transfer and the jockeying around. Do you
Sure.
get some D1 guys
You
once
bet.
in a while?
Yeah, we've got a couple D1 basketball players right now who decided to come back and play.
Good.
And one of the things and your question earlier, David, was a good one, is, how do you know as a recruit where you want to go? And Chris and Taylor both mentioned this, is you got to find, and so did you got to find that the people on the team that you're going to be spending all this time with are like-minded.
Yeah.
If they're not going to put the same amount of effort into their sport or their efforts that you are, then you're not going to be happy.
Or if they're not going to be booking it and you want to be a serious academic student.
Correct.
I'm suspecting that people were pretty good students at Stanford with you on the football team. And if you go to, and I don't want to name names here, but you go to another place, it's a football factory, they're graduating at a rate of probably about 50%, and Stanford's probably 89% for their athlete, well, the whole school. That's a serious consideration. I mean, did you respect the athletes as students at Stanford?
Yeah, absolutely. There was definitely some guys there who probably could have made it in school, without football or without the sport. Those guys, they definitely a lot of respect for. But they do a great job of keeping you, just keeping you on point. They have tutors, they have everything. It's hard to fail out,
Good.
basically, once you're at that level. And then just to go back to the kind of the evaluation process when you're comparing yourself to, the different divisions and where you think the best fit is for you. That's the current evaluation. People evolve, things evolve. Just because you're Division III or Division II or, didn't quite get the Division I scholarship or are still working to get a scholarship, doesn't mean, if your goal is to be, a pro athlete or whatever it is, or to play at the highest level, you can still do that. There are transfers, you can go to a higher level. Just kind of do your best at the time being, and then things, take care of yourself. They have a way of taking care of things, for you. Things work themselves out.
Keep the map out, keep the dream alive. Okay, let's talk about the nitty-gritty, about the recruiting process itself. This is how it normally should happen. Beginning of your junior year, you're allowed to get started. Usually that's when it occurs. If it's not occurring with you, you tend to get a little bit behind because the junior year is where it happens. You get either this little postcard, there's these mass mailings. I've been in these coaches' office. In fact, when we visited Yale together, Chris, I remember all these huge boxes of envelopes going on. They were recruiting thousands of people, and it's sort of a little love letter to get things started. And then you've got to return those things. Now, if you get a handwritten note, that's a big deal because the coach really wants to get something going. They're allowed to give you one call a week, Division 1 and 2, and a phone call is also a text message, all those other electronic things. And you want to start amongst a little team working with you. The coach, the athletic director, the high school coach, the counselor, your family. We're all in on this together, to support you and to help you. Then the next thing, if you're lucky, if it progresses, there's a home visit. And that can be pretty memorable. You sort of think it's a big deal if a coach comes to your town, and it's a fun experience. Then the next big thing is the campus visit, and you can do those officially and unofficially. The official visit is what counts. The school pays for it. Many times they'll fly you there, or they'll have you meet people. They put on the VIP treatment. They're there for 48 hours, and you can have 5 of those, 5 max. And 1 per institution. You can't keep going back and forth to the same place. You can do an unofficial visit at several places, but just 1 official. And you can only travel in your 12th grade year. Again, the 4 hours. And then obviously none of this happens unless you jump through that eligibility center thing. And you have to have those scores and transcripts sent to you. Okay, then the real big part of the process is sealing the deal. There's a scholarship offer. There's the commitment, this meeting of the minds, and then there's sort of a shake of the hands, an oral agreement for some of the schools. Like the Ivies can't really recruit, they can't give you anything, it's all based on what your need is, but the real true Division I scholarship places, there's a national letter of intent, and it's signed for football, I know, in February, different sports, different times, but you're obligated to that. You can't bounce out of that. So is that basically how you see it and what you went through, Chris and Vince?
Exactly right, yeah. It's a year-to-year contract.
Yeah, and so that's basically what's going to happen. Even on a little lesser level, with probably a little lesser level for Division II, a little lesser level for Division I AA, and certainly the schools that can't give you money. And Division III, it's totally different. The coaches can't come to you, they can't get on your campus. It's all sort of a negotiated showing interest in. But they have to have teams, and they take it seriously as well. Okay, just to clear up some facts here and some myths. Just so you're aware of some things. The average NCAA scholarship, at least in the last year or so, has been $8,700. And this includes schools that cost $58,000, $59,000. So we think it's a big full ride, but very few people are getting those. Tiger Woods got a full ride. I guarantee you that kind of an athlete's going to get it. And these big-time wide receivers and, and the running backs and the quarterbacks and a basketball point guard. I mean, the big-name people are going to get those, but I was astounded. I found that the average baseball scholarship, NCAA baseball scholarship, how much is it, do you think?
Oh, the average, well, at the Division I level, there's only 17 available,
Yeah.
and there's about 35 on the team, so.
They slice that up.
Yeah, they slice it up. They
Well, the
rate it a little
national
bit.
average is $5,000, which is astonishing to me.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, I knew you did. And that now we're not figuring football and basketball because that tends to skew the numbers. But for the majority of sports, men and women, and men get the lion's share of that. They get a little bit over half of it, but women get the average higher award. So we're working towards parity here, but we don't quite have it yet. Plus, there are more women too, which is can be an issue. And this astonished me. The number 1 sport for money is ice hockey. The average 21 grand. Big investment, big deal back east, a lot of bucks. But most scholarships are not that big, a couple of $1,000s, but it's nice to be recruited. Most sports have just a few scholarships, and they're divided up, like swimming, like at Stanford, they got a big men's swimming team, they win national championships a lot. Very few of those men's swimmers get scholarships because they're all going to the football players. But the women swimmers and divers are getting a lot of those scholarships. So every school's a little different. 2% of 6 million high school students get a scholarship, so that's not very encouraging. A lot of recruiting, we talked about this off camera, a lot of it's serendipitous, being in the right place at the right time and knowing the right people. Some people are just flat out lucky and some people are not. So, and again, some people create their own luck. But if you're approaching this as a way to invest in your kids and get that money back, just not going to happen. Will not happen. A lot more money comes from non-sports things, Model UN and academics and mathletics and going to all these leadership camps. You invest there, I think that can pay some more dividends. And I'm being objective here because I've been a coach and an athlete, and I'm a bias towards the athletes, but the reality of the matter is there's more money elsewhere.
And those similar different awards that give scholarships, a couple thousand here and there, I mean, you can kind of accumulate those as well that can go in addition to whatever you get from your school in scholarship money.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about some roles here. Vince, and you can, Chris, you can comment too, because you've dealt with the recruiters. What's the role of the recruiter? He sort of walks a thin line, doesn't he?
Yeah, the role of the recruiter is to go out and find the best student athlete for the university and for the program.
Without doing what?
Without breaking any rules.
And without promising too much that he can't deliver and so
Correct.
forth. And sometimes people liken them to used car salesmen once in a while.
Sometimes they do, but you got to remember, and again, Taylor had hit this right on the head, it's a long process,
Yeah.
and this is just like dating.
Yeah.
That's what this is. That's how you have to liken it.
Yeah, well, I use the metaphor of it's like musical chairs. When we turn the music off, there's 6 chairs, but there are 10 people in the room, and somebody didn't get a chair, and that's just the heart of the matter. What was your deal with recruiters, your experience?
Well, first, let me preface this. I have so much respect for recruiters. It's a hard job. I mean, there's, like you said, there's so many different kids they're looking at. Really, to cover everyone is it's impossible. So, I mean, they're constantly working, and it's not an easy job they have. So if they can, keep their sanity by the end of the process, I give them credit. What was your question exactly in terms of my?
Just how you worked with recruiters, highs and lows, things you learned?
Yeah, it's, I kind of went through the different levels. They really, I mean, they honor the system, but I mean, they really do push it. I
Pretty
mean,
good,
as
pretty
soon as they
trustworthy,
can, call you, they will. And there's some things that go on behind the scenes. I wouldn't say from the recruiter's point of view, but there's different alumni and different
Yeah.
things involved. I mean, there is some truth to what you see in the movies, depending on where in the country you are and at what level you are a player.
Think South.
So, yeah, definitely. I have, a lot of my teammates and good friends are from the South, Georgia over there, and it's I mean, that thing kind of happens. But for the majority of the people, it's very much
Pretty good.
by the book. But I mean, they do everything within their power, if they really like you. And then once there's an interest, they truly believe that you're going to go to the school. Vince alluded that earlier. Seeing the excitement in the kids, that's important because a lot of kids will just kind of spin your turn your wheels and just kind of waste your time.
Yeah.
I did it at times, and try to catch myself because it's just you're just wasting their time and it's not easy.
Ladies,
One thing you need to remember about recruiters too is if they're successful recruiting you, then they're going to be successful. And at the
Yeah.
end of the day, their job is to win whatever sport they're in and then graduate good people into the world.
Yeah, and the most important recruiters were the coaches. They're the biggest recruiters of all.
Well, the head
personal
coach,
the
come in
head
to seal
coach,
the deal, yeah.
Mhm.
Those are the guys.
Ladies, your experience with any recruiters? Good, bad, indifferent?
I would have to say that the whole point is, like they said, they are really busy and they have a lot of people that they are looking after. And I sent a couple emails to the Fordham coach and never got a response. And I was, what's going on?
But now you're going there.
Yeah, and the whole thing is, I think it's really important to go and visit
Yeah.
and actually meet the people because they can always come across differently on an email or a phone call.
Yeah, absolutely.
They could show interest or not show interest, and it can be totally the opposite when you get there, which is how it was at Fordham. I emailed her, didn't really get a lot of contact, decided to go anyways, and just had a totally different experience,
Good.
and it was really great. So.
Good. Deb, any thoughts?
I really agree with her. Emailing is really different from actually meeting the coach. I emailed some coaches. Some of them took longer to reply, I guess, because they have so many emails to reply to. But then on the email, you don't really know them, and going to the schools and meeting them, it was a totally different experience. And a lot of times, it was not what I expected. And the school the coach I met that was really nice. It was one that I wouldn't have expected in the first place. So that was really
the
important.
USC lady just comes off of winning the national championship, and she stops what she's doing and devotes time to you, and it was just like the nicest lady in the world. I was really impressed with that. Okay, let's talk about coaches now, because coaches are recruiters. What do coaches want? Well, first of all, you've got to be an athlete. They want somebody who loves the game as much as they do. They need sport-specific skills. They need a first baseman, they need a wide receiver, they need a catcher. They definitely want competitive people. People are physically, mentally tough. They need size, skill, strength, quickness, agility, all those things that we love as coaches. And they don't expect you to be the finished product. They want you to be able to grow into, the image that they have and want. And then they want a team player. They don't want a bunch of prima donnas. And your goals have to mesh with the team goals. Everybody talks about it, and I think the real good coaches recruit for character. You know, they're going to check into you, your personal references. They want to know if you're going to show up every day, you're going to play hard in every down, you're going to finish, you're going to play through the whistle. Are you going to play for us and for me and for the team in addition to playing for yourself? The other side of the coin, academics, you got to have it. You got to have the numbers. Are you going to be able to graduate? Am I going to lose somebody because you can't last here? Are you going to be a good graduate, a good ambassador, something that Vince talked about? You're going to get a reasonable degree. You're going to major in underwater mess kit repair. You know, we don't want to have that with our athletes. You know, can you, as an alumnus of the school, are you going to shine a good light on what it means to go to Cal State Monterey Bay, to Santa Clara, to St. John's, whatever? Role of the high school coach, you know, we're going to gloss over that. You know, I think we've talked, you know, a little bit about that. The role of the counselor advisor, I think, you know, my job is, you know, and I've been a coach and I've been a parent and I've, you know, a teacher and all that, so I, you know, can don all of those hats. But basically, you're going to, you know, be an advocate and go to bat for somebody and say the things that you can't say about yourself and portray you in the best light, and also be objective. You know, like, we've got to be honest because we can't sell a bill of goods because you're not going to trust my word. Like, if I say, well, Taylor is a typical great Stevenson athlete, student, you know, she can play in the Ivy League level, she can play in that Patriot League, you know, I better mean that and it better be true, because the next time I go and try to sell that, you know, it's not going to happen. You're not going to pay attention to me. And, you know, when I have somebody like, you know, Chris Boniface, this is a kid that can play, he can do the schoolwork at that level, he can play the sports at that level, you know, he's a solid citizen, he's somebody to be proud of, somebody you want to bring home to, you know, to meet your daughter, you know, then that better be true. And, you know, that's why we've all got obligations to each other. So that's sort of that role. The parent, we've danced around that a little bit. Anything else you want to add to the parent role?
Just, I think, being supportive and helping her realize that, you know, yes, these coaches are busy, and yes, you do need to put your best foot forward and be proactive, helping, keeping them on timelines, that sort of thing.
I can add, yeah. I want to emphasize the importance of the role of the parent in the process and the coach, because once you start getting recruited, I mean, you really need to double down your efforts in what you've been doing, what's been working for you, what's getting you this attention, your sports, your academics, taking care of those bases, and all the tests and everything else you're going through at this point. You know, it's a big distraction to have to deal with these coaches, sending out these letters, getting back to them, this paperwork. You know, the more responsibility that the parent, I believe, it helped me a lot, can kind of take, not use it as leverage to, like, you know, tell them where to go, but really just kind of let them be open. Let me, you know, unload some of this burden on myself in any way you can do that. It just makes the process just that much better for the student athlete, because there's just so much they're going through at that time, so much they're learning.
And you had great parents that grounded you and kept you your head out of the sky. And, you know, the opposite of the parent, I don't know if you guys watch this, the Friday Night Lights, that Texas football show for NBC. I think it's a wonderful thing as a parent, as a teacher, as a coach, all of that. But there's this, the sophomore quarterback's father is the parent from hell, and he's the opposite of what we're talking about, or the opposite of what the Boniface family was like. So latch onto those good models and try to follow them. Okay, let's sort of bring this to a close a little bit and think about some negative things first, and we'll close with some positive things. What are some drawbacks, some negative things about this whole recruiting process? Let's start with the boss here. You know, it's in your court. You guys take the credit, but you also get the blame. What's the bad part of recruiting?
Well, the bad part of recruiting is when people aren't doing their job, when coaches aren't going out and finding the true student athletes who are going to make us better, number one. And then number two, not doing the homework and then getting a student athlete in there who's not going to help us, who is going to be a bad teammate, who is going to be a bad member of the team. That's the hard part. That's when you miss something like that, that's really painful.
For families, what's the drawback, the bad parts?
Well, I mean, it has been a fun adventure, it really has, and I would say, yeah, a coach may be saying something and maybe implying something that maybe we misunderstood, and it really didn't happen that way, and that would be that's the only bad thing I can think of, because I really think it has been a good experience. I mean, a lot of things learned, but someone's saying something and then it doesn't really follow through.
It may or may not be their fault.
Right,
But,
yeah.
It's the process. Ladies, you're just coming into it now, Deb. Have you seen anything or anticipate anything that's negative about this?
Basically, it's just not knowing. So all the time, you just have to be on it, doing your best at everything. You know, trying to do everything you can to make it happen. But the worst part is actually not knowing right
Yeah,
now
not in
what's
control.
going to happen.
It's a big stress thing, yeah?
Yeah.
And Taylor, you've got some perspective now. What's negative about this?
I would say the negative thing is trying to keep my head in school, in high school.
Yeah.
Trying to stay focused in what I'm doing and keeping my grades up. And because it was really hard traveling all the time. I'd be gone, 2 weeks. I'd be in school for 2 days.
Okay.
And so just keeping up on work and, staying grounded that I am still in high school.
Sure.
So.
Okay, a lot of hidden negative things, but obviously a lot of great things. It's adventure, it's fun, you get your ego and your confidence build up, everybody loves to be loved. It's just a neat thing that happens to just 2% of the people. So if it happens to you, it's wonderful, and if it doesn't, your dream's not over, you can still do things. But you need to be warned. And I want to end with, I'm going to give you guys a charge of thinking about one last piece of advice to give to everybody, so think about that. But I want to give a couple of miscellaneous recruiting trips for people just to close here. Recruiting starts earlier and earlier. Sophomore year, I even hear stories about middle school and junior high and all that, but basically sophomore year, junior year, things start to heat up. Late sophomore year, too much earlier than that, people are shooting in the wind, I think. But and it ends at the beginning of the senior year. It's pretty much all over by that time, or it's pretty close to being over. Verbal commitments can come early, but then a verbal commitment is not binding. It's a partial thing. A couple other thoughts. Athletes are recruited for their talent, their speed, their size, their athletic ability, and their academic ability, as well as for character. And I think maybe those last three things are perhaps the most important. Few sports are recruited in high school. More and more, it is outside of the realm of high school, especially for women. And a lot of people are recruiting from data, from travel teams, summer leagues. You've got to keep that in mind. So, giving you a chance to think, go around real quick. What's a single quick piece of advice you can give?
To be proactive, really, to know that, you have the student athlete has to sell.
Good.
themselves.
Vince?
Be a good person.
Okay,
And get all that paperwork done early as fast as you can.
Chris?
I said this last year, and I think it's very true. Just follow your heart. You gotta. It's your first main decision. You're becoming an adult. You're in the real world. You gotta. Things are gonna be clouded. You can't make decisions with clear-cut information. You just really gotta listen to yourself and do some soul searching.
Good. Taylor?
I would say keep your mind open. Just be open to everything and don't close any one door off.
Fantastic. Deb?
I'd say take all your opportunities and do your best at everything you can do because I guess that's all you can do.
Good.
right
Good
now.
advice for life as well as sports. Well, let me give you my last piece of advice here. Always apply the broken leg test for sports. And that is, if the first week of school you break your leg, and you can't play your sport, are you still happy with that school? The broken leg test. Will you be happy if you're not there? Okay, this is Dave Miller, and I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank the parents and the students for looking in. I want to invite you to our next show, our final show of the year. It's going to be in a couple of weeks, the end of the month. We're going to talk about the transition to college, letting go and breaking away. We'd like to thank you for supporting us all year, and I want to end also with our mantra. I really believe this. It's never too early to start thinking and learning about college. And it's never too late to get started. You can always achieve your dreams and do what you need to do. Again, this is Dave Miller. Thank you for being with us, inviting us to see us next week. Have a good day.